Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at all of these trades coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So we are looking at the books that are coming out from Marvel Comics this week. And this week, of course, being August 29th or 30th, depending on where you get your books. We're looking at some epic collections, modern epic collections, some series wrapping up in trade paperback, a brand new series, and some anthologies, just a couple of anthologies, and then a Marvelverse book. So we got a lot to look at. But before going any further, don't forget to smash that like button, please, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, we put out videos every day. As always, in the description of the video, I have the timestamp so you can jump around in case you're curious about one or two books, or if you don't want any kind of spoilers for any of these books, because you already know you're picking them up. Alright, today we're going to kick it off with the IRONHEART Marvelverse book. Kicking off this very big week with Marvelverse IRONHEART. This is one of their digest-sized books that retails for $9.99. It is a little bit smaller than your trade paperbacks trim size. But also cheaper, $9.99. This one has 120 pages, focusing on the era of Riri Williams as Ironheart. Not really right after she appeared in the pages of Iron Man. That can be found somewhere else. So this collects Ironheart number 1, 6, and 7, Generations Iron Man and Ironheart, and that is just a one-shot. But it also has the Ironheart Marvel Legacy Primer in here that kind of catches you up to speed as to who this young lady is that is wearing this particular armor and why it looks like Iron Man's armor. But here we have her meeting Tony Stark, but this is a really interesting Generations book. So Generations was a series that went around the Marvel comics in, when was that, 2017, and it was when these legacy characters met the original characters. Like, you had the character of Logan meeting the character of X-23 when she was all new Wolverine during the Tom Taylor era. But this one is interesting because this is a different Tony Stark. This is Tony Stark from a different universe going as the Sorcerer Supreme. And he gets to meet the young lady that is now donning this costume that looks like Iron Man's. Then we have Eve Ewing's run on Ironheart, not the whole run, but issues 1 and 6 and 7 in here, when she teams up with Miles Morales and talking about her new life at MIT, just kind of breaking it on her own. And the book, 120 pages, and if you've not read Ironheart, the Eve Ewing series, it is really good. Didn't last very long. I think it lasted like 8 issues. You have variant covers all the way in the back, and that is Ironheart. This being a long week, I do have to fly through these because you all know I'm long-winded and like to talk a lot. This is Elektra, Black, White, and Blood. There was a Treasury edition that already came out earlier this year, but this is the trade paperback version. And what this is an anthology series of 3 different stories in each comic. So this collects Elektra, Black, White, and Blood 1 through 4. And it's all done in these color patterns of just, you guessed it, black, white, and, well, red. Different artists and different writers coming in here. You have a story by Fabian Nicieza in here that is quite excellent, and I did not expect him to be writing the character. You have the covers here, and sometimes the variant covers are on the opposite side. Now, these, like all the other stories that have done, that Marvel has done with the Black, White, and Blood, take place at different times, sometimes in the past, sometimes in the present, and without giving too much away, sometimes they could be an alternate take on these characters, but just using these colors right here. And it is a beautiful collection. If you haven't read these, do yourself a favor and check these out. They are quite awesome, especially if you're just interested in a particular character, because we've had Carnage, Deadpool, Wolverine, and Moon Knight, and we've got what was it, the Darth Vader that is coming out. but this is the latest one to come out in trade paperback format. $17.99. There is parental advisory that's mainly due to the violence in here. And then we have variant covers in the back. I'm not sure why I'm going backwards, but I guess I just am. 136 pages, $17.99. Marvel Voices Community. Marvel celebrates Latin X stories and creators. I think it's pronounced Latinx. Yeah. I didn't come up with the word. I think somebody told me it's Latinx. You know what? Latinx sounds so much cooler, though, because it's like a superhero team, like the X-Men. Maybe that's what they should have called this. Anyway, this is another anthology book that collects Community, the 2021 one-shot, and then Community, the 2022 one-shot. There's also Reptile #1 in here, but it's the one-shot from 2021. And this showcases writers and artists from the Latino community, as well as characters from the Latino community. We've seen this before with Native Americans and African Americans. There's a couple other voices collections that they've done over the last couple of years. Some of these characters have been around for a while, like the White Tiger or Miles Morales. And some of them, they do introduce some new characters. But it's cool to see Reptile back. I really like that character. And it makes me miss that era of the Avengers Academy, the Avengers Arena. There's also interviews back here too. And then history, la historia de nosotros. So our history here of all the Latino characters that have appeared. Yeah, the one that I remember the most is Sunspot when I was a kid. Then when he would start speaking Portuguese, I was so confused. I was like, oh, I thought he was Latino. And then, because I didn't have the first few appearances of him, it turns out that he was from Brazil. And then his expressions like Madonna, because Chris Claremont was writing him. And that's just the way he reminded you that he was from Brazil. In the back is where you're going to find the variant covers. And there's some pretty badass covers back here. And I forgot about that character. Oh, that's Sam Alexander. Then you have Leonardo Romero covers back here. 184 pages, and this particular book retails for $24.99. Marauders. This is the Steve Orlando era, so it's the Marauders by Steve Orlando, Volume 2, and this wraps up the Marauders series. It was started by Jerry Duggan, even though it features some of the same cast members as Jerry Duggan's Marauders. We have a tie-in with the Judgment Day here, but the best thing about that was the return of this character that I've always been a fan of, mainly because of the video game, and of course I'm talking about Birdie. That's right, Sabretooth's psychic that would heal him when it was like his way of doing therapy. Then we get one of the most craziest stories that I didn't see coming. Because there are some surprising characters in here. Do not read the back of the book if you want to, unless you want it spoiled for you. I'm flipping through here, and yeah, not making sure that I don't show who the surprising characters are. But they travel back to a time with the first mutants. So it's like the first mutants on Earth is where the Marauders are, but they're not alone. It's the whole the Threshold. The Threshold 3 are involved, and by going to the past, they could possibly be erasing the future. So who comes and helps them? I was like, what? Okay, sure, I buy it. It's so hard to talk about these books sometimes without going into spoilers, but I think for people of this particular series in the 90s, there's an omnibus coming out later no, I think it's been postponed until next year. There's your hint. They'll be happy. I was just completely surprised that those characters showed up. Now, not all of them, but some of them. And then the series wraps up, but it also has the... Let me get back here. Now, it is wrong. This states that it collects Marauders 6 through 12. And it does. But this also states that this collects X-Men Before the Fall, Sons of X one shot, and that's not what's collected in here. What's collected in here is First Strike. That's what's collected in here. And of course, this is the Orcus going just full-fledged on destroying all mutants. but this is their particular outfits during the Fall of X era, which is a big event right now. Well, not right now, a couple months ago, going on through the pages of the Krakoa era X-Men. Punisher Volume 2, The King of Killers, Book 2. Now, before I even crack this open, if you haven't read the first one, just jump to the next book, because I don't want to spoil what's going on through the pages of Punisher. And this is the wrap-up to that particular series by Jason Aaron. Now, if you don't care about spoilers or you already know, then yeah, by all means, I'm not going to go into the big ending here, because I think that I would leave for people to read. Because that's my thing when I do overviews. Despite of how I feel about certain stories, it doesn't matter. I leave it up to my viewers to decide, you know, what they enjoy and what they don't. I'll just give you the premise. Right now, of course, Punisher is still leading the hand. And now the world has taken notice. Now, in the first volume, it is revealed that the reason he's leading the hand, what they've given him, is his wife back, Maria. And through a series of flashbacks, and I love that the way this is done, by the way. So Jesus Saiz is the main illustrator of what's going on in the present. The flashbacks are all done by Paul Azuqueta. So what is revealed through these pages is an eye-opener for the relationship between Maria and Frank Castle. You know, because you know the story of Frank and just swearing vengeance on the people that killed his family. Now that he has his wife back, we start seeing him having flashbacks of their marital issues, right? He's suffering from PTSD. He just came back from the war. And now we start seeing things through her perspective. So those flashbacks are very important. And those flashbacks pretty much lead into the big ending here. Now, I'm sure many people have already talked about the ending of this book and what it means to them. And, you know, it's labeled as Punisher No More. All I'm going to say is, look, Frank Castle, he'll be around for a long time. You know, you live through comics long enough, you start seeing just about everything. And I mean everything. Anywhere from Suicide Run to the era when Frank Castle was black for a while. And when he was a Frankencastle. Everything. Frank Castle will be back. That's all I will say. Okay. So the world has taken notice that Punisher is now leading the hand. So you have Daredevil, of course, just thinking that Frank is being possessed by some kind of demon. Ares coming in with his army and claiming war on Frank Castle in the hand. But the biggest thing that happens is in issue 10 and 11 when the Avengers come in. And one by one, they fight him not just physically, but also mentally. And I will let you find out what exactly goes down in these next two issues. Because the next two issues is what the whole Punisher No More story is. And I don't want to spoil that for anybody. But yeah, Maria, through a series of flashbacks, you get to find out they were having troubles. And all that leads to the big ending here. Alright, let's look at the couple of extras. And that is just the thumbnail size variant covers in the back. This book retails for $24.99 and it has 192 pages. Don't forget, it's not just Punisher, King of Killers Book 1, but there's also this Punisher War Journal, which is quite excellent. Scarlet Witch, Volume 1, The Last Door. And this is the new series by Steve Orlando. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Every week I do a pick of the week. This week is one of the hardest weeks I've had because we're talking about my favorite Avengers story ever. Like, that is my favorite Avengers story coming up. And we have this wonderful series. We have the wrap-up to the Punisher. We have the freaking Venom, Agent Venom era that I love so much. So, go and buy this. This was excellent. I'm just going to talk about the first issue and show off a little bit of the next few issues. But oh my gosh, how did this not come out in an oversized format? And when I flip through here, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm just going to talk about the setup, the first issue, and then the cliffhanger of the first issue, which is not a big reveal, I don't think. The big reveals come later on. So Scarlet Witch by Steve Orlando. Steve Orlando is one of these writers that is very hit and miss with me. I've enjoyed some of the things he's written, and then other stuff, not so much. So I didn't know what to think of this. I go into these type of stories completely blind, and I don't read online what anybody thinks about these particular stories. I've never been like that. I do the same thing with movies. So Scarlet Witch, The Last Door, Steve Orlando, Sarah Pichelli, and Russell Dodderman. Holy crap. And then Carlos Nieto doing annual #1. But bringing it all together is Matthew Wilson's beautiful colors here. So this is a fresh start for the character of Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch is now in Lock Kill, New York. And what she's doing is she's building this emporium that you'll see a little bit later. But you get this big fight right here with Dr. Hydro and his creatures as they're attacking on the Pacific. And she stops it. And she comes back to the emporium right here, where you see a bunch of books, and you see this young lady right here, Darcy, making her first Marvel Comics appearance because she's been part of the MCU. But unlike the MCU version, she is hanging out with Scarlet Witch instead of Jane Foster or Thor. And her character's a little bit mysterious. She's working for Scarlet Witch, and I'll talk about the mysteriousness here in a second because we have to talk about The Last Door first. So her brother comes and visits. He wants to catch up with her, bringing her food. And they start catching up on what she's doing. And it's her talking to him just opens up what this comic is about. And it's a redemption arc. Like, if you've read the James Robinson Scarlet Witch book, it is phenomenal. And this really feels like the follow-up to that. Because unfortunately, Scarlet Witch is one of these characters that writers just for some reason have the hardest time writing. Both her and Polaris. Most writers, what they'll end up doing is writing these two characters, these two ladies, as crazy and throw them off. But they are so much more complex than that. So Steve Orlando gets it. As a matter of fact, Polaris appears through here, and I love the way that he wrote her too. So she tells him about The Last Door. And what The Last Door is anybody can open it from anywhere around the world if they're in dire need of magic. The help from magic, because she sells potions, she sells books here, mainly things that you would find at a little store in a little bitty town somewhere that sells all kinds of candles and things like that. But The Last Door is specifically for people that need help from magic users. And sure enough, while Pietro is there, this young lady comes through. And she is all the way from Italy. She realizes that everybody's speaking English. And she starts telling everyone about what's happened. And it's funny because, most people be freaking out. Like, how in the hell did I get here? But she's like, oh, I've seen a documentary on Doctor Strange. I know about magic. I love that because they do live in the Marvel Universe. It's not like the 60s or 70s or 80s anymore where people are just freaking out about these things that are happening to them. So she begins to tell Scarlet Witch about what's happening, and she tells her that her entire town has been taken over by the Corruptor. He's invaded the minds of everyone in town, making him the leader. Now, the Corruptor, of course, it's been a while since we've seen him. He was first in the pages. Oh, was it? Yeah, it was Marv Wolfman's Nova. Marv Wolfman created the character. But he's been around. He's been a nemesis to the Avengers for many years. So Wanda takes it upon herself to go through the door, but not before trying to figure out how she was the only one in town not to be corrupted by him. So this young lady is holding a stone right here. And the stone was given to her by her father. And she begins to tell Wanda that, yeah, he was a miner. He found this, and it's my worry stone. So she rubs on it whenever she gets anxiety. And she's like, oh, here, let me give it to my brother, and we'll see what's underneath that rock. In the meantime, I'm going to go over there and stop the Corruptor. So she goes through the door, takes her to Italy, and sure enough, this is where it gets good. The Corruptor tries to manipulate Wanda in here by bringing up her past, all the mistakes that she's made, everything that she has caused. And, if you've read comics for a while, yeah, she has done a lot of bad things. But it doesn't make her who she is, right? And she realizes that and turns it on him, immediately turning him to stone and giving him an out. And the out is, once the people of this town forgive you, it has to be up to them, the spell will break. So that's what kind of character we're dealing with now. Just in those couple of pages, it tells you where Wanda is now in state of mind. So she takes the necklace from this young lady because she thinks that there's an ancient stone in there that she may need, but she gives her a gift certificate to the Emporium. Now Stacy here is like, hey, let's go get some dinner, let's go get some drinks, and Wanda mentions, yeah, maybe you can tell me how and why you walked through the last door. And then Darcy changes the subject. She's like, yeah, well, you promised not to rush me about that. Now, so she has her own secrets. And then the cliffhanger is who walks through the door. That is Vivian Vision. If you read Tom King's run, if you read The Champions, you know who she is. So this is Wanda just pretty much saying, you could call her my daughter. And that's where it ends. So each issue is kind of a standalone story where somebody needs help and Wanda helps them out. And it's such a wonderful plot. I love this. This took me by surprise. I'm serious. This would have gotten the seal of approval, but there were so many great books. Russell Dodderman, I miss his internal artwork so much. And I didn't even talk about the annual in here. So this collects the first 5 issues as well as the 2023 annual that leads directly into the next big event, and that is the Contest of Chaos. So there is a returning character that shows up through here, and that character has changed in the Marvel comics. So if you haven't been keeping up with all the comics like Avengers and things like that, you may not recognize it, but immediately they tell you who it is. All right, let's look at the extra. So you have the variant covers back here. Some of them are splash pages and some of them are thumbnails. And yes, Polaris does appear through these pages. And you do get to find out a little bit about Darcy through these pages too. The book retails for $19.99 and it has 168 pages. And now comes the portion of the video where I show off the spines of all the books coming out this week from Marvel Comics. And also a small reminder to hit that like button if you're enjoying our videos. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. Alright, let's continue with the overviews. Avengers, the Kang Dynasty. So what Marvel has decided to do is put this story out in a trade paperback format. It's been available before in trade paperback, but if you're getting these in omnibus editions, this would be in Omnibus Volume 2, the Busiek and Perez era. This has also been available in hardcovers. It's been available as a soft cover. I believe it was overseas. There was a soft cover omnibus. But this collects the entire saga that lasted way over a year. And there are, people that have mixed feelings about this. Some people loved it. Some people were like, it's a little too much. This is my favorite Avengers story. This is my favorite Kang story. It is phenomenal. The payoff is so good. I can't hype this enough, and I try to stay neutral when doing overviews, but hell yes, this gets the seal of approval. We're talking about Kurt Busiek right here. We're talking about Alan freaking Davis, and you have some early artwork in here from Ivan Reyes, Patrick Searcher wrapping up the story, Brent Anderson, Kieran Dwyer, Manuel Garcia, and it is the story of Kang and how he wins. And it all starts off with Kang and the Crimson Centurion just coming to Earth and just talking about how they're going to conquer it. This time around, Kang has finally figured out what he wants to do in order to enslave all the Earth is to call upon every time-traveling version of himself, plus all of the villains, to go and just wipe the floor with the Avengers. Now, the most important thing I will say about this book, though, is during this time, this is the Busiek era of the Avengers. This is the tail end of his run. I think issue 56 is the last book that he worked on before Jeff Johns took over, and then eventually Chuck Austen, and then of course that leads into New Avengers, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But this collects issues 41 through 55 and the material from Avengers Annual 2001. The book is 408 pages, and it retails for $39.99. So it is a thick book. It's like the size of an Epic collection. Very thick, like that. So keep that in mind. Even though it's not an epic, it's the size of one. Let me just show you some of the artwork in here. And what I was saying is during this time, it's a different cast of Avengers. You have Wonder Man right here and his relationship with Scarlet Witch. They're about to end things because he wants to move to California. He's been given this particular opportunity, and she's like, you need to go and we'll figure out what to do. You have Firebird on the team, the Black Knight, Captain America's still there, Quicksilver, and Thor, and you also have Triathlon, Warbird, who's going through some changes herself. This is, of course, Carol Danvers, who will eventually go back to being called Miss Marvel and then going and becoming the new Captain Marvel. But this is the big fight here with Kang and how Kang ends up winning. And it is such a freaking awesome story. If you're a huge fan of Marvel Comics and you have been reading comics since the 60s, you know, with the first Fantastic Four issue, and you've loved superheroes, the payoffs here are just so amazing. Some of the cameos that show up through here. There is Monica Rambeau. Right now, during this time, she's... what was she called? Photon? No, she's Spectrum during this time. So you get all kinds of cameos in here, and it's every Avenger just coming in and trying to take out Kang. But like I said, the story is about Kang finally winning and how everybody has to just kiss his butt. And it's such a freaking awesome. This story went on for way over a year, and I think that was some of the problem. There's the enough said issue. That was some of the problems with some of the people that just, you know, the story went on way too long. For me, this could have been 3 years and I would have loved it. You're going to see some people, you know, not make it through this. You know, Kang has finally won. He has pretty much made the Avengers his slaves. And some of the other Avengers are still out there. It's a phenomenal story. That's all I will say about it. Even if you're not familiar with the character of Kang, Busiek does an amazing job of introducing him to new readers, including, you know, things like the Crimson Centurion or the Immortus character. But you'll get to find out exactly who Kang is. I seriously doubt they'll use most of this for the movies. I think there's 2 movies, right? One of them's called the Kang Dynasty. But who knows? They very well could. Fantastic Four Epic Collection, Volume 9. This is exciting for a lot of reasons. This collects Fantastic Four 147 to 167. And it's exciting for a lot of reasons for me because there was some stuff in here I hadn't read. I did have these 2 books right here. These are the George Perez Visionaries. And I'm hoping to replace them with the next Epic Collection. But this collects Fantastic Four 147 to 167. Giant size Fantastic Four 2 through 4, Avengers 127, and then material from Marvel Treasure Edition number 2. Jerry Conway, Roy Thomas, Len Wein, Tony Isabella, Steve Englehart, Chris Claremont, and Marv Wolfman. But yes, this begins the era of George Perez on the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. Rich Buckler and John Buscema, and Sal Buscema being the main artist. And here's your table of contents. So, kicking it off with Namor going completely nuts. So yeah, during this part, Namor's just losing it. He wants Sue no matter what. And he is teaming up with the Fearsome Four right here. I'm sorry, the Frightful Four. But then he just cuts loose and summons all kinds of monsters to go and attack the city. Then we have a big giant size issue right here where they travel through time and Ben Grimm gets temporarily cured. And then that story continues into the next giant size, number 3. But not before we have a wedding, and you all know about Fantastic Four and weddings, and also Marvel weddings. But we are getting the wedding of an Inhuman and a mutant, and you can find out who that is by reading the book. And then we jump back to the giant size stories. Now, during this particular time, Sue is kind of taking a back seat. During this particular time, we have Medusa replacing her for a while. Johnny has a new costume. And this is some Rich Buckler artwork right here with Tony Isabella writing it. And it seemed like they were trying to find the right, or maybe just people were kept falling behind on scripts because we had Jerry Conway, and then we had a little bit of Len Wein, then we had Tony Isabella. But this is Len Wein and Chris Claremont introducing us to one of the most interesting characters in mutant history, and that is, of course, Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. So he makes his first appearance right here in that annual. And then we go back to the Fantastic Four with the return of the Silver Surfer and the big fight against the Thing. Doctor Doom making his return, but this time around he might need the help of the Fantastic Four. Then we have Roy Thomas coming back to write this particular story. And Rich Buckler doing a lot of artwork during this time. We have the return of the Inhumans. And eventually Sue, of course, comes back to her family and the team. That she was just taking a small break, as the Fantastic Four do from time to time. Johnny eventually gets his costume back. The Thing and the Hulk end up fighting. There's the return of Archon. But then they end up teaming up against each other. Now, there is one issue in here that when I was reading this, this one right here, the return of the Mystery Mask Man. It was only, I think, 9 pages long, if I'm not mistaken. It was very short. So I was wondering what happened and what the rest of the issue is, so you're not really shorted any pages. It was a reprint of some Strange Tales when this character first appeared in those particular stories. So that's what was originally published. And in the Epic Collection, they then reprinted. Not sure if when we get to the omnibus editions, if they'll reprint the Strange Tales reprints or not. But that would be cool to have it all in one, even though it's a story from a while back. Then we have the saga of the Crusader, which lasts for a few issues, making its first appearance in issue 164 of the Fantastic Four. Now, when I was reading this, because I had these, like I said, in the Fantastic Four Visionaries, George Perez, I thought it was Quasar. So I'm glad that in the Epic Collection, all the way in the back, so let's look at the extras, because that doesn't have the happiest of endings there for Thelius. You have some house ads, and then you have these giant-sized books which reprint older issues of the Fantastic Four. There's the Treasury Edition. Love these pinups right here. Big John Buscema. Original art. But this is what they have here. So I thought it was Quasar, but it's interesting because what they did was... This is Marvel Boy, like from the 50s book. And of course, Marvel Boy has come back since then. But eventually, this is the inspiration for the character that appeared, known as the Crusader, in Captain America. And then Mark Gruenwald decided to later change his name to Quasar. So I guess when I was reading those, I was kind of right, maybe. And then, of course, original art. All right, we got 2 more books to look at. This one is 520 pages and retails for $49.99. Next up is Venom, Modern Era Epic Collection, Agent Venom. So this is the Modern Era of Venom, Volume 4, 2011 to 2012. So, of course, we're looking at Agent Venom. Now, I assume the Volume 1 and 2 will probably be the Matt Gargan era. But I like to map those out with my buddy Curtis. Now, Curtis has a big issue with modern epics because they tie so heavily into the Marvel Universe. And he had an issue with, what was it, Journey into Mystery. And I can see that. And I think he might have an issue with this one unless he already knew what was going on. Because this ties heavily to what was happening in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man at the time. Especially with the character of Flash Thompson. So, if you don't want to know anything about this particular era of Venom, by all means, skip to the next book, which is New Avengers, to wrap up this particular week of overviews. Now, if you don't care about spoilers, or you want to know a little bit of what leads into this, then by all means, stick around. Because I feel like I have to talk about it, because it's not recapped here at all. I mean, you can find out by reading the book what exactly happened. So, in this particular era of Spider-Man, this is during the big time era. So it's when Dan Slott was writing Spider-Man. No, actually, this started in the Brand New Day era. So Dan Slott wrote a story about how Flash Thompson lost his legs, but came home a hero. And, of course, if you know the history of Flash Thompson, then you know that's the type of character he was, right? He was a bully in school, first appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15, and picked on Peter. But you know that just by reading some of his stories with him, he had a father that was very abusive, and that's the way he took it out. But he looked up to Spider-Man. It's weird. He picked on Peter, but looked up to Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man was his hero. So every decision he based was just what Spider-Man would do. So he joined the army to go fight overseas again, and saved his, I think it was his commanding officer, but ended up losing his legs because he just lost too much blood and they couldn't save the muscle tissue. So there is a government program called the Rebirth Program. Ugh. Grant Morrison, Weapon X, baby. Yeah, I was not the biggest fan of that story. It's a retcon. I leave Weapon X alone. Weapon X, it's his own thing. But anyway, the Rebirth Program is, of course, the same program that gave us Captain America. And what they have is the actual alien symbiote, the one that possessed Eddie Brock and later Gargan. Now, I'm not going to go into detail as to what happened, but if you read Siege, you can find out exactly what happened between Scorpion Venom and the symbiote. But now the government wants to test it out on a human subject to make him an ultimate machine. And that's where Flash Thompson decides, wait, if I can get my legs back, if the symbiote can make my legs happen again and he can just be part of my body, then I'm in. Now, of course, there's rules and regulations. This is also during the time when he was dating Betty. He was dating Betty Brant. Now, if you hadn't read Spider-Man and you're jumping into this will spoil like one of the deaths in the pages of Spider-Man. So just another thing to keep in mind, because all the stories are so connected during this time. It's the Marvel Universe. That's the beauty and also the crutch of having a shared universe. This collects Amazing Spider-Man 654, just the B story, and then 654.1, which is where he goes on his first mission with the Flag Smasher, and he realizes that, oh my gosh, the symbiote's still big time in control. He freaking ripped the Flag Smasher's arm off. That's not Flash Thompson doing that. Also collecting Venom 1 through 16, 13.1 through 13.4. This particular book has 496 pages and retails for $44.99. So people really like the backup story so much that Rick Remender stepped in with Tony Moore, same people that worked on Fear Agent, and gave us a Venom ongoing series. Then this, of course, being the Agent Venom era, fighting off different villains, mainly the Jack-o'-lantern, who sticks around for a while, fighting Kraven the Hunter in the Savage Land, Kraven riding this big dinosaur because he thinks it's Spider-Man, because that's just how loopy Kraven is during this time. But yeah, Flash Thompson coming to terms with having the symbiote and realizing that he's not fully in control, especially when the symbiote's around Spider-Man, and the government having a button that they can push to make his neck blow up in case he ever goes completely crazy. We have a couple of new villains that show up through here, but he just goes on different missions and tries to do the right thing, still trying to be Flash Thompson while learning to control the symbiote. There's a couple of other stories in here that shows his relationship with his father. And this is the stupid... this is the car trip with Jack-o'-lantern, who's got a messed up face, all due to, of course, Venom. But then there's the big crossover, the Circle of Four, right here with Red Hulk and X-23, because that's what Laura was known as at the time, and Ghost Rider. All hell breaking loose. Now, it's got every single part of that 5-part event through these pages. Doctor Strange, of course, teaming up. And then the last couple of issues... Oh, the freaking strong writing between Peter Parker and Flash Thompson. They've known each other since, like I said, Amazing Fantasy number 15. And Flash is just asking, why don't you ask Peter if he can find some, or he's asking Peter Parker, why don't you ask Spider-Man, you're friends with him, if he can find somebody to help me, like, get prosthetic legs or something, like Doc Ock or Kurt Connors, one of those guys. Some really good storytelling in here. This stuff is not available in omnibus format if you have the Ven Omnibus stuff, but this gives me hope that maybe they will collect that stuff in a Ven Omnibus format one day. But that is Venom, Agent Venom. New Avengers, Epic Collection, Volume 1. So kicking off a new era of Avengers, and this is still sparking the questions of, like, what's going to happen with the Avengers when the title changes back to Avengers? Are they going to keep calling it New Avengers Epic Collection? I mean, I guess they very well could, right? Because this is the modern epic era. So this collects Avengers 500 to 503, the director's cut of 500, and then the Avengers finale. And then you get New Avengers 1 through 10 and the director's cut of New Avengers number 1, plus the Most Wanted files. Brian Michael Bendis' era of New Avengers. So right before this, I was talking about the Avengers, the Kang Dynasty. It was Kurt Busiek, and then Jeff Johns took over the book for a while, which was phenomenal, very underrated. And then Chuck Austen. Then came Brian Michael Bendis. This is right after he was working on Ultimate Spider-Man, making that a top seller. And yes, he made the Avengers Marvel's flagship titles. Nobody was talking about the mutants. People were talking about the Avengers. And he kicks it off with this Avengers Disassemble storyline, where he kills off some Avengers, like some classic characters, some beloved characters, but he ends up killing them off. And I'm not gonna go into spoilers. I would love to do an Avengers Disassemble old reader, new reader, so we can talk about it in depth and see what the new readers think about that era. No, not like this. Yeah, I have some strong feelings about that. But then it is revealed who the person behind the Avengers Disassembled was, who was doing all the killings. So by the end of the book, the Avengers decide to kind of break the team up, which is where you end up getting young Avengers, and then you get the new Avengers. And I have to talk about this part right here. Before this, they're all toasting, of course, to the fallen Avengers, and once an Avenger, always an Avenger. And of course, people use that page as a tribute. Marvel used that page as a tribute to the wonderful artist that drew these particular pages, and that is George Perez, of course. But this just shows how much love the Avengers had. Again, the team up being a little bit different, like you had Lionheart in there. This finale is pretty cool because you have different artists drawing different eras of the Avengers, because you have such a big cast. So then we get New Avengers. This is the Breakout storyline, which is the 5-part storyline where the Raft, they're letting the prisoners out, so the Avengers have to form a new team to put a stop to this. And they get Iron Man, Captain America, and Wolverine, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Luke Cage. And that's your new team of Avengers. Eventually, you'll get the Sentry here in a few. But this is the new team as of right now. And I love when Wolverine just hangs out in the Savage Land to take a little vacation. I remember this was going on at the same time that Chris Claremont was writing the story with the X-Men in the Savage Land. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're actually tying it? No, they're not. Okay. So close. So close. But we do have a brand new team. And the first story arc kind of assembles them together. You know, this time around, we have some big, heavy hitters. Wolverine's never been an Avenger. Spider-Man's been an Avenger maybe 1 or 2 issues or try to join, and then they were like, no. So it's really interesting that they're using their big guns to become members of the team. And Wolverine's like, yeah, I can be an Avenger and an X-Men. The next issue is, of course, the introduction of the Illuminati. And this is all drawn by Steve McNiven. Brian Michael Bendis is with David Finch at the first few issues here. And, of course, the Avengers Disassembled. But Steve McNiven comes in and does the Sentry story here. Gets a little meta. Gets a little crazy when you're talking about the character of the Sentry. Gets a little Animal Man in some parts. But the big thing is that the Illuminati is first introduced through the pages. The people that kind of pull the strings of the entire Marvel universe. And here is... This is really cool. I'm so glad they collected this. This is the Most Wanted files. So it's an alphabetical order. Here we go. And it just showcases like a handbook, right? Telling you who these villains are. And keep in mind, this is also 2005. So some of this stuff might be outdated. And some of these villains, I loved reading stuff like this because, you know, I wasn't familiar with some of the characters when I was a kid. I would look it up here. Like, how creepy is Mandrill? I mean, his powers. There's Mr. Fear. Like, you know, if you weren't a big reader of Daredevil, you would read about Mr. Fear through these type of collections. So I love when they have stuff like this. Here's the extras in the back. Interview with Brian Michael Bendis. There's David Finch. Boy, they were so young. I guess we all were. All the covers right here, the Avengers, the variant covers, including the mystery character that was supposed to join them. and then they switched it up. Who Ronan was supposed to be. I do love the connecting covers by Joe Quesada, and then the individual covers by different artists. But when you put them all together, it's the same picture, but it's by different artists. Like Joe still did the Century, but you have different artists' portrayals of the character. That's why Wolverine doesn't look as big as Joe's Wolverine. Some variants. These are the Century variants. And this is when they were still dipping their toes into variants before they came back big. And then the script to issue number 1. This is part of the director's cut. And little Easter eggs who all of these villains were in the raft. And some more covers here for Wizard Magazine. The book retails for $49.99 and it has 504 pages. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these books. Let me know in the comments down below which ones you're picking up, which ones you're currently reading in trade, which series you're currently collecting. Are you going to start the Venom in the modern epic format, or hopefully one day an omnibus will come out? Are you going to get the new Avengers in modern epic format, continuing the Fantastic Four? What did you think about these new series like Punisher or Scarlet Witch, without going too much into spoilers because I don't want anybody to get spoiled? But yes, leave those comments down below. Smash that like button on the way out. Check out our Patreon and Spreadshop, amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And thank you so much to our existing patrons. Could not be making videos like this possible without you all. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.